Captain Jake Morrison stared at the massive alien structure floating in space before his ship. Omega Point Station looked like a giant crystal flower made of metal and light. It was bigger than any human city and older than human civilization itself. The Xantharian Empire had built this place 2,000 years ago as a meeting ground for different alien species. Jake had spent 3 months traveling from Earth to reach this moment. His ship Aurora carried only 12 people, but they represented all of humanity. The weight of that responsibility pressed down on his shoulders like a heavy blanket. Everything humans did here would shape how the galaxy saw them forever. Dr. Lisa Parker stood beside him on the bridge. She was the best xenobiologist Earth had, and probably the smartest person Jake had ever met. Her job was to help humans understand alien biology and culture. Right now, she was reading everything the computer could tell them about Xantharians. Tony Richards worked at the communication station. He had learned 17 alien languages in the past year. His brain worked like a computer when it came to understanding how different species talk to each other. The Xantharians spoke through a mix of sounds and color changes in their skin. The Aurora docked at one of the station's many arms. Jake felt his stomach twist with nerves as the airlock opened. The first thing that hit him was the smell. It was clean but strange, like metal and flowers mixed together. The gravity was lighter than Earth normal, which made walking feel bouncy. Ambassador Vel Thara waited for them in the docking bay. She was 7 feet tall with blue skin that shimmered like water. Crystal spines ran down her back and arms. Her face was almost human-like, but her eyes were solid black with no whites. When she spoke, her skin shifted through different shades of blue. "Welcome humans to Omega Point Station," she said in perfect English. "I am honored to conduct these integration proceedings with your species." Jake noticed how she said integration, not negotiation. The Xantharians already had their plans made. They wanted to fit humanity into their existing system like a puzzle. Peace. Jake smiled and shook her hand even though her skin felt cold and rough. "Thank you, Ambassador. We are excited to learn about the galactic community." Vel Thara led them through corridors filled with aliens Jake had only seen in pictures. Tall gray beings with too many arms floated past. Small furry creatures scurried along the walls. A group of rock-like aliens stood, talking in voices that sounded like grinding stones. The meeting room was designed for many different species. There were pools for water-breathing aliens, high platforms for flying ones, and different types of seating. Vel Thara gestured for the humans to sit in chairs that looked almost normal. "Your species shows promise," Vel Thara began. "You have achieved faster than light travel and basic energy manipulation. The Empire is prepared to offer you protectorate status under Xantharian guidance." She activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy. Thousands of star systems glowed in different colors. Blue systems belonged to the Xantharian Empire. Other colors marked different alien civilizations. Earth appeared as a tiny white dot on the edge of everything. "Protectorate status provides many benefits," Vel Thara continued. "Protection from hostile species, access to galactic trade networks, and guidance in proper civilization development. In return, you accept Xantharian authority in interstellar matters." Jake listened carefully, but something bothered him about the way she talked. Every word sounded planned and rehearsed. This was not a conversation between equals. This was a powerful empire telling a weak species what would happen to them. "What if we prefer to remain independent?" Jake asked. V. Elithera's skin shifted to a darker blue. "Independence is inefficient. The galaxy functions through ordered hierarchies. Each species contributes according to their natural abilities. Chaos results when species attempt functions beyond their development level." Dr. Parker leaned forward. "What determines a species' natural abilities?" biological analysis, and cultural assessment. The Empire has perfected these evaluations over millennia. Humans appear suited for agricultural production and basic manufacturing. Your emotional nature makes you unsuitable for complex decision-making. Tony Richards made a soft sound that might have been a laugh. Jake shot him a warning look. Getting insulted on the first day would not help anyone. While the official talks continued, Jake noticed something interesting happening outside the meeting room. His crew members were talking with station personnel during breaks. Kyle Davis, this ship's engineer, was showing a Metherian technician something on his tablet. The alien's face showed excitement as Kyle explained human repair techniques. Angela Foster was in the medical bay sharing earth pain relief methods with alien doctors. She had a small crowd of different species watching her demonstrate acupuncture. On a volunteer. Even some Xantharian medical staff stopped to observe. At lunchtime, the humans ate in the station's main dining area. Tony Richards sat with a group of translators from different species. Soon they were all laughing and sharing stories about the difficulties of cross-species communication. Kyle Davis found himself surrounded by engineers eager to hear about human problem-solving methods. Jake realized something important was happening. While the official negotiations moved slowly through Xantharian bureaucracy, ordinary humans were making real connections with aliens. They were sharing ideas and techniques that the formal process ignored completely. That evening, Jake walked through the station's residential areas. He saw small groups of aliens talking quietly in corners. They gestured toward where humans were, staying. Some looked curious, while others seemed worried or excited. The next morning, Velthara seemed different. Her skin showed flashes of yellow that Tony said indicated confusion or concern. During their meeting, she asked unexpected questions about human social structures and technological development methods. "Your species demonstrates unusual adaptability," she said finally. "This requires additional evaluation before protectorate integration can proceed." Jake smiled. Humanity had been in the galaxy for less than a week, and they were already changing things. The virus was beginning to spread. 6 months after first contact, the cargo ship Horizon approached Kepler Station with a full load of Earth goods. Captain Beth Sullivan watched the massive trading post grow larger on her screen. It looked like a city built inside a giant metal ring that spun slowly in space. Thousands of ships from dozens of species came and went from its docking bays. Beth had made this run 12 times now. Each trip brought more than just trade goods. Her crew carried stories, ideas, and ways of thinking that spread through the galaxy like seeds on the wind. The Xantharians called it contamination, but Beth preferred to think of it as sharing. Carlos Martinez, her navigator, was teaching alien pilots new jump calculations that saved fuel and time. His methods worked better than the standard Xantharian navigation protocols that had been used for centuries. Word was spreading through pilot networks across 3 star systems. Ryan Thompson, the systems analyst, had developed new ways to optimize station life support systems. His innovations made environmental controls more efficient and less likely to fail. Station engineers were quietly implementing his suggestions without telling their Xantharian supervisors. The Horizon docked at Bay 12, next to a sleek Aquarian transport ship. The Aquarians were water-breathing aliens who served as the galaxy's deep space freight haulers. Their captain, Reef Singer, had become friends with Beth over several meetings. Today he seemed agitated as his blue-green skin showed rapid color patterns. "Problems with the cargo masters again," Reef Singer explained through his translator device. "They assign us the most dangerous routes because we are considered expendable. 3 Aquarian ships lost this month in the Void Territories." Beth felt anger rise in her chest. The Xantharian system treated different species like tools instead of people. Each race had assigned roles based on their biology. Aquarians got dangerous jobs because they could survive in water if their ships failed. It did not matter that. They were intelligent beings with families. That is not right, Beth said. Your people deserve better treatment. Reef Singer's colors shifted to surprise. Better treatment is not possible. This is the natural order. Xantharians decide. Others obey. Says who? Beth asked. On Earth, we believe all intelligent beings have equal rights. No one species is better than another. The concept seemed to confuse Reef Singer. His translator struggled with words like rights and equality because his language had no equivalent terms. The Aquarian social structure had been shaped by millennia of Xantharian rule. Over the next few days, Beth and her crew went about their normal business. They traded Earth coffee for rare minerals, human entertainment programs for alien art, and Earth textiles for advanced electronics. But they also traded something more valuable: ideas, security. Chief Amanda Walsh was called to resolve a dispute in the station's factory district. Workers from 6 different species had stopped production over working conditions. The Xantharian manager wanted to use force to get them back to work. Amanda listened to both sides instead of just following orders. She learned that the workers faced dangerous conditions for little pay, while management lived in luxury. The Xantharian manager insisted this was natural because workers were lower species. Let me try something different, Amanda suggested. She organized a meeting between workers and management. For the first time in station history, both sides sat at the same table as equals. The solution they reached was simple: better safety equipment, fair pay increases, and worker representation in decision-making. Production resumed at higher levels than before because workers felt valued instead of exploited. Word of Amanda's success spread through underground networks that existed on every station. Workers who had accepted their fate for generations began asking why things had to stay the same. Small acts of rebellion started appearing throughout Xantharian space. Dr. Lisa Parker established a research station on Xanthar, Prime, the Empire's capital world. Officially, she studied galactic biochemistry for Earth's scientific databases. In reality, her lab became a meeting place for scientists from many species who wanted to share ideas freely. Matt, Williams, and Stephanie Clark worked with alien researchers on projects the Xantharian Academy had banned. They studied cross-species medicine, developed new energy sources, and explored theories about consciousness that challenged official doctrine. The breakthrough came when they discovered that many supposedly impossible projects were actually achievable. The Xantharians had suppressed research that might threaten their control. Species declared incompatible for certain work proved highly capable when given proper training and equipment. Dr. Parker's reports back to Earth included more than scientific data. She documented how Xantharian control depended on keeping species ignorant of their own potential. Knowledge was power, and the Empire hoarded both. The Xantharian Council met in emergency session to discuss what Elder Zarveth called the human contamination. Reports came from across their territory describing unusual behavior among subject species. Workers questioned authority, scientists pursued forbidden research, and traders formed networks outside official channels. The humans spread dangerous ideas, Zarveth declared to the assembled council. They teach others to think beyond their designated functions. This threatens the stability we have maintained for millennia. Military Commander Storvac agreed. Human influence grows exponentially. Each infected individual spreads the contamination to others. Standard containment protocols have failed, but containment was already impossible. Human ideas had taken root in alien minds across the galaxy. The concept of individual worth, the possibility of change, and the dream of freedom spread faster than any disease. On the mining world of Karanos, the rock-like silicates began their first strike in recorded history. They had been used as living excavation equipment for 2,000 years. Now they demanded recognition as intelligent beings with rights. The strike leader was a young silicate named Stone Who Questions. He had learned about human concepts of dignity and self-determination from a trader named Bob Chun. The ideas took hold because they filled a need the silicates had never been allowed to express. Similar uprisings occurred throughout Xantharian space. The Mytharians refused dangerous atmospheric processing assignments. The Void Dwellers abandoned their isolation and began expanding into forbidden territories. The crystalline beings of Arcturus started creating art instead of just manufacturing tools. Each rebellion was small, but they added up to something larger. The galactic order that had seemed permanent for millennia began showing cracks. The Xantharian response grew more desperate as they realized the scope of the problem. Communication restrictions were imposed throughout the Empire. Contact with humans was limited to essential personnel only. Alien species found sharing human ideas faced punishment or exile. But the infection had already spread too far. Captain Beth Sullivan completed her 20th run to Kepler Station and noticed the changes. Security was tighter, and Xantharian guards watched everything. But in quiet corners and hidden spaces, the conversations continued. Ideas once planted could not be uprooted by force. Reef Singer approached her during the loading process. His colors showed determination mixed with fear. He spoke quietly so the monitors would not hear. Many Aquarian ships have stopped accepting dangerous assignments, he said. We demand equal treatment, or we withdraw from Xantharian service. The idea spreads through all the deep space fleets. Beth smiled. The virus was working exactly as it should, not through force or conquest, but through the simple power of believing things could be better. Humanity had given the galaxy something it had forgotten: hope for change. The Xantharian Empire still controlled most of the galaxy, but their control was weakening. Every day more aliens learned that the natural order was not natural at all. It was just one way of organizing society, and other ways were possible. The infection was spreading, and there was no cure for freedom. 2 years after humanity entered galactic civilization, the infection had spread beyond anyone's expectations. Governor Sam Brooks stood on the observation deck of New Hope Colony, watching ships arrive from across the galaxy. They came carrying refugees, traders, scientists, and dreamers from dozens of species. All of them sought something the rigid galactic empires could not provide: freedom to choose their own destiny. Hope was humanity's largest colony outside Earth. It orbited a yellow star similar to Sol and welcomed any being who accepted the colony's basic principles. All intelligent life had equal rights. No species was superior to another. Every individual could pursue their own path as long as they did not harm others. These ideas seemed simple to humans, but they were revolutionary to most of the galaxy. Deputy Director Rachel Kim handled the daily administration of the colony. Her office received thousands of asylum requests every week from aliens fleeing their traditional societies. The Aquarians who refused dangerous shipping assignments. Silicate miners who wanted to be artists instead of living tools. Xantharian citizens who questioned their empire's rigid hierarchy. Even some Xantharians came seeking the freedom their own society denied them. The breaking point came when the Aquarian collective formally withdrew from their alliance with the Xantharian Empire. For 800 years, the Aquarians had served as the Empire's deep space transport fleet. Now their elected council declared independence and joined humanity's growing coalition of free worlds. Peter Adams led the diplomatic team that negotiated the Aquarian withdrawal. He was Earth's best negotiator and understood how to speak to aliens without condescending to them. The key was treating them as equals and listening to their actual needs instead of telling them what they should want. We no longer accept the role of expendable cargo haulers, declared Reef Singer, who had become the Aquarian representative to the Human Alliance. Our people have value beyond our ability to survive ship failures. We choose our own contracts and demand fair payment for dangerous work. The Xantharian response was swift and brutal. They declared the Aquarian collective rebels and sent warships to force their compliance. The Aquarians had no military fleet, but they had something better: human tactical support, an alliance with 40 other species who had joined the growing rebellion. Admiral Emma Rodriguez commanded humanity's space defense force from the battleship Liberty. She had studied every battle in human history and understood that superior numbers meant nothing if used poorly. The Xantharians fought like they governed, with rigid tactics and predictable strategies. The Battle of Kepler Station lasted 3 days. Xantharian forces outnumbered the Allied fleet 2-1, but Emma's tactics confused and frustrated them. Instead of meeting them head-on, she used small, fast ships to harass their formations, while larger vessels struck at weak points. The Xantharians had never faced an enemy that refused to follow standard combat doctrine. More importantly, the battle was broadcast live across the galaxy through human communication networks. Billions of beings watched the mighty Xantharian fleet struggle against a coalition of supposedly inferior species. The Empire's image of invincibility cracked like glass. Dr. Marcus Johnson and Dr. Nenia Foster had developed the technology that made such broadcasts possible. Their faster-than-light communication system allowed instant contact across vast distances. Ideas could now spread as quickly as ships could travel. The Xantharians called it a weapon of mass disruption, and they were right. Throughout the galaxy, established orders began collapsing as beings discovered alternatives to their traditional lives. The crystalline hegemony faced massive worker uprisings. When their people learned they could choose their own professions, the rigid caste system that had defined their society for millennia dissolved in a matter of months. The Mytharian Trade Federation split into competing factions as individual Mytharians formed their own companies instead of serving the collective. They had always been natural entrepreneurs, but their society had channeled that energy into state-controlled commerce. Now they discovered free market capitalism and embraced it with enthusiasm. The Void Dwellers abandoned their policy of isolation and began aggressive colonization of empty star systems. For 3,000 years they had believed the galaxy was too crowded and dangerous for expansion. Human explorers showed them vast regions of unexplored space, perfect for new settlements. Each change created more change in an accelerating cascade. Species that had been enemies for centuries discovered they had more in common with each other than with their former rulers. Ancient grudges dissolved when beings realized they had been fighting over artificial divisions imposed by their governments. Economic impact was enormous. Trade that had flowed through official Xantharian channels now moved along new routes controlled by the growing alliance. Human colonies became trading hubs where any species could buy and sell freely. The old system of imperial monopolies could not compete with genuine free markets. Cultural exchange accelerated along with trade. Human art forms like music and literature spread to alien worlds, while humans learned new forms of expression from their allies. The first interspecies universities opened on human colonies. Students from dozens of races studied together as equals. Dr. Lisa Parker established the Galactic Research Institute on New Hope Colony. Scientists who had been restricted to narrow specializations in their home societies could now pursue any field that interested them. The rate of discovery and invention increased dramatically when brilliant minds were free to explore without bureaucratic interference. Matt Williams led a research team that included representatives from 18 different species. They worked on projects that would have been impossible under the old system where each race was limited to predetermined roles. Their breakthrough in quantum computing came from combining human creativity with crystalline mathematical precision and void-dweller dimensional manipulation abilities. Stephanie Clark headed the medical research division, where doctors from many species shared their knowledge freely. Diseases that had plagued certain races for millennia were cured using techniques borrowed from other civilizations. The Xantharian medical establishment had kept such information classified to maintain their technological superiority, but the greatest changes were social and political. Billions of beings who had never imagined they could control their own lives suddenly discovered they had choices. They could leave home, change professions, marry outside their species, create art, start businesses, or pursue any dream they could imagine. The psychological impact was profound. Depression and suicide rates plummeted among species that joined the alliance. Crime decreased when beings had legitimate opportunities for advancement. Birth rates increased as people felt optimistic about the future for the first time in generations. The Xantharian Empire and their allies watched in horror as their carefully ordered galaxy descended into what they called chaos. From their perspective, the human infection was destroying everything that made civilization possible. Hierarchies that had maintained peace for millennia were collapsing into anarchy. Elder Zarveth addressed the emergency council session with barely controlled panic. The contamination spreads faster than we can contain it. Entire star systems abandon their traditional roles. Trade networks collapse. Military units refuse orders. If this continues, the Empire itself will fall. Military Commander Storvak presented battle plans for a massive offensive against human space. We must cauterize the infection before it reaches the core worlds. Total destruction of human colonies may be necessary to save galactic civilization. But even within the Xantharian government, some voices questioned the old ways. Younger officials who had secretly studied human philosophy wondered if their empire's problems came from trying to suppress natural change rather than the change itself. These doubts spread through the bureaucracy like cracks in a foundation. Governor Sam Brooks received intelligence reports about growing instability throughout Xantharian space. Revolts on industrial worlds. Military units defecting to join the alliance. Even Xanthar Prime itself showed signs of unrest as citizens learned about the freedoms available. In human territory, the virus had reached critical mass. It was no longer spreading through direct human contact, but through alien-to-alien transmission. The ideas had taken on a life of their own. Even if humanity disappeared tomorrow, the infection would continue spreading until it transformed the entire galaxy. Rachel Kim processed the latest refugee numbers with amazement. 3 million beings had applied for asylum this month alone. New Hope Colony was expanding faster than they could build new housing. Similar scenes played out on every human world as the galaxy's oppressed masses sought freedom. The old order was dying and something new was being born. No one knew exactly what the galaxy would look like when the transformation was complete, but one thing was certain: it would be more free than it had ever been before. The human virus had infected everything, and there was no going back. The Stability Alliance formed in the third year of what historians would later call the Human Infection Crisis. 12 major galactic empires put aside ancient rivalries to face what they saw as an existential threat to civilization itself. The Xantharian Empire led the alliance, but even their traditional enemies recognized the danger that human ideas posed to all established orders. The alliance met on the neutral world of Vont, Concordia Prime, in a massive conference facility built inside a mountain. Emperor Valkaran of the Xantharians sat at the head of a table that stretched across a chamber, large enough to hold 10,000 beings. Around him gathered the rulers of civilizations that controlled most of the galaxy. The Hegmark of the Crystalline Empire spoke first. His voice sounded like breaking glass filtered through electronic processors. The human contamination threatens our fundamental social structures. Our worker castes abandon their designated functions to pursue individual desires. Production. Efficiency has dropped 30% as beings waste time on personal fulfillment. Queen Silphara of the Metherian Trade Confederacy agreed. Her people had always been merchants, but now they formed independent companies instead of serving state interests. Profit motivation without proper guidance leads to chaos. Our economy fragments as individuals prioritize personal gain over collective. Stability. The worst reports came from the Void territories, where the formerly isolationist Void dwellers had begun massive expansion programs. Ambassador Deep Current spoke through a translation device since his species communicated through electromagnetic pulses. Void dweller clans abandoned traditional territories to establish colonies in neutral space. They claim right of settlement based on human concepts of manifest destiny. Elder Zarveth presented the Alliance with detailed analysis of human influence patterns. The infection spread through 3 primary vectors: trade contact, communication, networks, and refugee movements. Each exposure point became a new center for further contamination, as converted beings spread human ideas to their own communities. Standard quarantine procedures have failed, Zarveth admitted. The infection adapts to local conditions and spreads through existing social structures. We face an enemy that weaponizes hope itself. Military preparations began immediately. The Alliance pooled their fleets into the largest armada in galactic history. Thousands of warships from different civilizations trained together despite language barriers and incompatible technologies. Their goal was simple: complete destruction of human influence before it could spread further. But the Alliance also pursued other strategies. Information warfare became a priority as they attempted to counter human communication networks. Massive propaganda campaigns portrayed human colonies as chaotic dystopias where beings lived without purpose or guidance. Most of these claims were false, but some Alliance citizens believed them. The most desperate measure was biological warfare research. Alliance scientists worked to develop pathogens specifically designed to target human physiology. They analyzed captured human genetic samples and designed viruses that would be harmless to other species but lethal to humans. Dr. Vex Moran led the biological weapons program from a secret facility in the Crystalline Empire. His team included the galaxy's best xenobiologists and molecular engineers. They faced an unusual challenge since humans showed remarkable genetic diversity compared to most species. Human DNA contains surprising variation, Dr. Vex Moran reported to the Alliance Council. Their evolutionary history produced multiple subspecies that intermingled over time. Designing a universal pathogen requires targeting fundamental human biochemistry. Meanwhile, the Human Alliance prepared for the coming storm. Captain Jake Morrison now commanded the battleship Freedom as part of Admiral Emma Rodriguez's expanded fleet. Intelligence reports confirmed massive alliance military buildup in systems throughout their territory. Jake's crew included beings from 43 different species united by shared beliefs rather than biology. His tactical officer was a crystalline defector named Sharpmind, who brought detailed knowledge of Alliance battle doctrine. His communications specialist was an Aquarian named Wavespeaker, who coordinated with resistance cells throughout Alliance space. The first major engagement occurred at the Meridian system, where Alliance forces attempted to destroy a human research station. 300 Alliance ships faced a coalition fleet half that size defending the station and its 1,000 researchers from 18 species. Admiral Emma Rodriguez commanded from her flagship Defender, using tactics that confused Alliance commanders. Instead of traditional battle formations, she deployed her ships in fluid patterns that adapted constantly to changing conditions. Alliance forces found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to behave predictably. The key innovation was decentralized command structure. Each ship captain could make independent decisions based on local conditions instead of waiting for orders from Fleet Command. This allowed rapid response to changing battlefield situations, but required enormous trust between commanders and subordinates. Morrison's Freedom led a squadron of fast attack ships against the Alliance's heavy cruiser formation. They used hit-and-run tactics learned from human historical studies of asymmetric warfare. The Alliance had superior numbers and firepower, but their rigid command structure made them slow to adapt. The battle lasted 18 hours and ended with Alliance forces withdrawing after losing nearly half their ships. The human coalition lost only 30 vessels while protecting the research station and its irreplaceable scientists. More importantly, the victory was broadcast live across the galaxy through Dr. Nina Foster's communication networks. Billions of beings watched the mighty Stability Alliance defeated by a smaller force of mixed species fighting for freedom. The psychological impact was enormous as oppressed populations throughout Alliance territory saw that resistance was possible. On the ground, resistance movements, coordinated by humans like Lieutenant Colonel Amy Stevens and Major Chris Walker, launched simultaneous attacks across Alliance worlds. They used guerrilla tactics that combined human experience with local knowledge provided by alien allies. The resistance focused on infrastructure targets that would disrupt Alliance military operations without harming civilian populations. Communications arrays, supply depots, and transportation hubs became primary targets. The attacks were coordinated, but appeared random to Alliance security forces. Amy Stevens led a mixed team of humans and crystalline rebels in a raid on the main military computer complex on Arcturus Prime. They infiltrated the facility during a shift change and planted viruses in the central data systems. Within hours, Alliance command networks throughout the sector were compromised. Chris Walker coordinated similar operations across 12 different worlds. His teams included former Alliance military personnel who knew the weaknesses in their old systems. The most effective operatives were beings who had been trusted servants of the Alliance until human ideas showed them alternatives. The Alliance response grew increasingly desperate as their control weakened. Mass arrests of suspected sympathizers filled detention centers beyond capacity. Entire populations were relocated to prevent contact with resistance cells. Travel restrictions made normal commerce impossible, but repression only strengthened the resistance. Each harsh measure convinced more beings that the Alliance represented oppression rather than order. Underground networks that had started as discussion groups evolved into organized revolutionary movements. Dr. Lisa Parker made a crucial discovery while analyzing captured Alliance biological weapons. The pathogens were designed based on fundamental misunderstandings of human physiology. Alliance scientists assumed humans were just another standard species that could be targeted through universal biological markers. They do not understand what makes humans unique, Dr. Parker reported to the Alliance command. Our genetic diversity and evolutionary adaptability make species-specific biological weapons ineffective. The pathogens they developed would kill some humans, but many others would survive and develop immunity. More importantly, the biological weapons program revealed the Alliance's greatest weakness. They saw the galaxy in terms of fixed categories and immutable laws. The idea that species could change and adapt was so foreign to their thinking that they could not develop effective countermeasures. The Alliance's fundamental problem was that they were fighting an idea rather than an enemy. Military force could destroy ships and armies, but it could not eliminate concepts like freedom and equality once they had taken root in alien minds. Every victory for the Alliance created more martyrs to inspire further resistance. Intelligence reports confirmed that the infection had spread even into Alliance core worlds. Xantharian citizens secretly met to discuss human political theory. Crystalline workers formed illegal unions demanding representation in government. Metharian merchants established underground trade networks that bypassed state controls. Alliance leadership faced a terrible realization. Their enemy was not just humanity, but the natural desire for freedom that existed in all intelligent beings. They had spent millennia suppressing this desire through careful social conditioning. But human contact had awakened it again. Operation Cleansing began at dawn on 17 different worlds simultaneously. The Stability Alliance had decided that half measures would not stop the human infection. Supreme Admiral Morketh commanded the largest military force in Galactic history from his flagship Eternal Order. 3,000 warships moved through hyperspace to ward targets throughout human space. The plan was brutally simple. Every human colony would be destroyed in a coordinated assault that would happen quickly for effective resistance. The Alliance believed that removing humanity from the galaxy would stop the spread of dangerous ideas and allow civilization to return to its proper order. Emma Rodriguez detected the attack formations while they were still 12 hours from their targets. Her expanded fleet included ships from 68 different species, but was still outnumbered 4-1. Traditional military doctrine said the defense was hopeless, but humans had never followed traditional doctrine. They expect us to meet them head-on like civilized warriors. Emma told her command staff aboard the flagship Liberation. Instead, we give them the most uncivilized war in galactic history. The human response violated every rule of proper space. Combat. Instead of defending fixed positions, Emma scattered her forces across hundreds of systems. Small squadrons of mixed-species ships harassed Alliance supply lines, while larger formations struck at secondary targets far from the main assault. Captain Jake Morrison led a task force that included his old ship Aurora alongside vessels from 12 species. Their mission was to attack the Alliance's main communication relay at Sigma Station, while their fleets were committed to the offensive against human worlds. Jake's force jumped into the Sigma system expecting heavy resistance, but found only a skeleton defense force. The Alliance had committed everything to Operation Cleansing and left their rear areas vulnerable. It was exactly the kind of mistake humans had learned to exploit. The destruction of Sigma Station cut Alliance forces off from Central Command at the worst possible moment. Individual fleet commanders found themselves fighting independent battles without coordination or support. The rigid Alliance command structure that gave them strength in conventional warfare became a weakness when communications failed. But the real turning point came from an unexpected source. As Alliance fleets bombarded human colonies, they discovered something shocking. Many of the defenders were not human at all. Crystalline warriors fought alongside human soldiers. Aquarian ships shielded human evacuation transports. Void Dweller weapons platforms protected human orbital installations. The infection had spread so thoroughly that the galaxy's oppressed peoples now saw human colonies as their own. Destroying human worlds meant destroying the hopes and dreams of billions of beings who had found freedom there. The Alliance was not just fighting humanity anymore, but half the galaxy. On New Hope Colony, Governor Sam Brooks coordinated the evacuation, while Alliance bombardment fell around the capital city. Refugee ships lifted off, constantly carrying fleeing civilians to safety in the outer system. Many of the ships were crewed by aliens who risked their lives to save humans, who had given them hope. The Alliance ground assault met fierce resistance from an unlikely mix of defenders. Human Marines fought beside crystalline warriors whose bodies could withstand direct energy weapon hits. Aquarian combat engineers flooded defensive tunnels, making them impossible for land-based troops to clear. Metharian saboteurs used their small size to infiltrate Alliance positions and plant explosives. Rachel Kim led a team of civilian volunteers in evacuating the research districts where Lisa Parker's laboratories contained irreplaceable scientific data. They moved through, bombed buildings while Alliance fighters strafed the streets above. Beings from a dozen species worked together to save knowledge that belonged to all of them. The evacuation succeeded because the Alliance had fundamentally misunderstood what they were fighting. They thought they were destroying human colonies. But the colonies had become something more, symbols of freedom that belonged to everyone who dreamed of a better life. Similar scenes played out across human space as the infection revealed its true scope. What had started as human ideas had become galactic principles that transcended species boundaries. The Alliance was not fighting an invasion, but a revolution that had already won. The decisive moment came at the Battle of New Geneva, where Admiral Emma Rodriguez gathered every available ship for a final confrontation. The Alliance fleet still outnumbered the Defenders 3-1, but numbers no longer told the whole story. Emma's force included vessels from 112 different species united by shared beliefs rather than conquest. They fought with desperate courage because they knew defeat meant the end of freedom for countless worlds. Every ship captain understood that this battle would determine the galaxy's future. The Alliance arrived expecting to face scattered resistance, but instead found the largest multi-species fleet in history waiting for them. More shocking was the fleet's composition. Many ships bore the markings of Alliance member species who had switched sides during the war. The Void Dweller Confederation had withdrawn from the Alliance after their industrial worlds declared independence. Their massive manufacturing capacity now served the human coalition. Crystalline battle cruisers that had been built to enforce Alliance rule now fought to destroy it. The battle raged for 3 days across an entire star system. Alliance forces had superior firepower, but the Coalition used tactics that made their numerical advantage meaningless. Instead of fighting as separate fleet units, the Coalition ships operated as a single organism that adapted constantly to changing conditions. Meanwhile, diplomatic efforts led by Ambassador Frank Turner achieved a breakthrough that changed everything. The Metherian Trade Federation formally withdrew from the Alliance and declared neutrality. Their vast commercial networks provided intelligence and supplies to Coalition forces while denying them to the Alliance. Sarah Mitchell coordinated with resistance cells throughout Alliance space to launch simultaneous uprisings timed to coincide with the New Geneva battle. Oppressed populations on 1,000 worlds rose against their rulers while Alliance fleets were committed to fighting humans. The uprising was not coordinated by any central authority, but spread organically as beings who had learned about freedom decided to claim it for themselves. Factory workers seized control of production facilities. Military units mutinied and joined the resistance. Even government officials abandoned their posts to support revolutionary movements. The Alliance faced a terrible choice. They could continue fighting the Coalition fleet while their home territories erupted in revolution, or they could withdraw to restore order in their own space. Either choice meant acknowledging that Operation Cleansing had failed. Admiral Morketh made the decision that ended the Stability Alliance. Faced with reports of revolution throughout Alliance space, he ordered a general withdrawal to protect core worlds. The largest military force in galactic history retreated in disorder as its political foundation collapsed. The psychological impact was devastating. Alliance citizens who had been told they were fighting to preserve civilization watched their mighty fleets flee from a smaller enemy. The aura of invincibility that had maintained Alliance rule for millennia shattered like crystal. Rachel Brooks and Danny Phillips led communication teams that broadcast live coverage of the Alliance retreat across the galaxy. Billions of beings watched the supposedly superior Alliance forces abandoning their offensive to deal with domestic rebellions. The message was clear. The old order was finished, but the Coalition's victory came at enormous cost. Several human colonies had been devastated by Alliance bombardment. Hundreds of thousands of beings from many species had died defending freedom. The galaxy was free, but it was also broken and would need to be rebuilt from the ground up. The irony was not lost on anyone involved. The Alliance had launched Operation Cleansing to stop the spread of human ideas, but their actions had accelerated the infection beyond their worst nightmares. By attacking the colonies, they had forced the galaxy to choose sides, and most chose freedom over oppression. In the aftermath of the failed offensive, the Alliance began disintegrating as member species declared independence or joined the human coalition. The Crystalline Empire split into dozens of democratic republics. The Mytharian Confederacy became a loose alliance of trading companies. Even the Xantharian Empire faced massive internal revolts. The human virus had reached critical mass during the war. It no longer needed human carriers to spread because aliens had internalized the ideas and made them their own. Even if every human in the galaxy disappeared, the infection would continue until it transformed every civilization it touched. Admiral Emma Rodriguez stood on the Bridge of Liberation watching Alliance ships jump away from New Geneva. The galaxy's greatest military force was in full retreat, leaving the field to a coalition that had been outnumbered and outgunned. Victory belonged to beings who fought for principles rather than conquest. The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. Freedom was not just the absence of oppression, but the presence of justice. Building a galaxy where all beings could pursue their dreams would be harder than any military campaign. 5 years after the end of the Galaxy War, President Helen Carter stood before the assembled representatives of the Galactic Cooperation Council. The massive chamber on New Earth Station could hold delegates from 300 different species, and today it was completely full. Beings who had been enemies for millennia now worked together to build something the galaxy had never seen before, a truly free civilization. The transformation had not been easy or peaceful. When the old empires collapsed, they left behind power, vacuums that ambitious warlords tried to fill. Entire star systems descended into chaos as beings who had never governed themselves struggled to create new institutions. Some regions remained hostile to human influence and fought desperate wars to restore the ancient hierarchies, but the changes could not be reversed. Too many beings had tasted freedom to accept oppression again. The ideas that humans had brought to the galaxy had taken root so deeply that they were now part of the galactic consciousness. Every intelligent being knew that alternatives to tyranny existed. The Galactic Cooperation Council operated on principles that would have been unthinkable under the old order. Every species had representation regardless of their technology level or military power. Decisions were made by consensus rather than force. Individual rights were protected even when they conflicted with group interests. Helen Carter had been elected to lead the council, not because she was human, but because she understood how to make democracy work among radically different species. Her background as a labor organizer on Earth had taught her that beings with nothing in common could still find ways to cooperate when they shared basic values. The council faced enormous challenges. Economic disruption had caused hardship throughout the galaxy as old trade networks collapsed and new ones struggled to emerge. Refugee populations numbered in the billions as beings fled regions still controlled by authoritarian remnants. Pirates and warlords exploited the chaos to build criminal empires. Dr. Marcus Johnson directed the Galactic Scientific Exchange from his headquarters on Luna Station. The facility orbited Earth's moon and served as a neutral meeting ground for researchers from every corner of the galaxy. Scientific advancement had accelerated beyond all predictions as species shared knowledge freely instead of hoarding it for competitive advantage. The breakthrough discoveries came from combining different ways of thinking about fundamental problems. Human creativity merged with crystalline mathematical precision, produced new theories about the nature of space and time. Aquarian fluid dynamics enhanced void dweller dimensional engineering to create impossible architectures. Mytharian commercial instincts applied to research management made scientific projects more efficient than ever before. But the most important discoveries were not technological. Social scientists from many species worked together to understand how democratic institutions could function across the vast diversity of galactic civilization. They studied human history while adapting Earth's political innovations to alien conditions. The key insight was that democracy was not a single system, but a family of related approaches to governance. Each species needed to develop their own version based on their biology, psychology, and cultural traditions. What mattered was the underlying principle that authority came from the consent of the governed. Some experiments failed spectacularly. The Crystalline Republic collapsed into civil war when different castes could not agree on representation formulas. The Mytharian Free Trade Zone became a battleground between competing commercial factions. Several Void Dweller colonies simply vanished into dimensional space rather than deal with political complications, but other experiments succeeded beyond all expectations. The Aquarian Confederation created a fluid democracy where citizens could change their allegiance between different political currents as their interests evolved. The Silicon Collective developed a consensus-based system where every individual's voice carried weight, proportional to their expertise on specific issues. Even species that remained outside the Council's authority were affected by the human virus. The Xantharian remnant controlled only a fraction of their former territory, but their government had become more responsive to citizen needs. The hegemonic core worlds maintained authoritarian rule, but granted individual rights that would have been unthinkable before human contact. The economic transformation was as dramatic as the political changes. Free markets replaced the controlled trade systems that had enriched ruling classes while impoverishing workers. Competition drove innovation as beings who had been limited to predetermined roles discovered they could excel in unexpected fields. Captain Beth Sullivan commanded the exploration vessel New Horizon as it prepared for humanity's first intergalactic journey. The ship's crew represented 47 different species, united by curiosity about what lay beyond their transformed galaxy. They carried with them not just scientific instruments, but the accumulated wisdom of a civilization that had learned to value freedom above order. The New Horizons mission was both practical and symbolic. Radio telescopes had detected signals from nearby galaxies, suggesting the presence of intelligent life. If other civilizations existed, they might be struggling under the same kinds of oppressive systems that had once dominated this galaxy. Beth understood the implications of their journey. They were not just explorers, but potential carriers of the virus that had transformed galactic civilization. Whatever they found in other galaxies would never be the same after contact with beings who believed in freedom and equality. The crew included veterans of the galaxy, war alongside young beings who had grown up in the new order. Jake Morrison served as tactical advisor, while Dr. Lisa Parker headed the xenobiology department. Tony Richards had developed new translation protocols that could adapt to completely alien communication methods. Their destination was a spiral galaxy, visible to the naked eye from Earth. Initial analysis suggested it contained millions of star systems and potentially billions of intelligent species. The journey would take 2 years, even with the fastest hyperspace drives, but the potential discoveries were worth any risk. As the New Horizon prepared for departure, President Carter reflected on humanity's role in galactic transformation. Humans had not conquered the galaxy through superior technology or military force. They had succeeded by offering something irresistible, the idea that things could be better than they were. The virus metaphor had proven remarkably accurate. Ideas spread through contact between minds, just like biological infections spread through contact between bodies. But unlike diseases, the human virus strengthened rather than weakened its hosts. Beings infected with concepts of freedom and dignity became more capable rather than less. The transformation was not complete and might never be. Some regions remained hostile to change, while others struggled with the chaos that freedom could bring. Building democratic institutions was harder than destroying authoritarian ones. The galaxy still faced challenges that would take generations to resolve, but the direction was clear. The old order based on hierarchy and oppression was finished. Whatever replaced it would be built on foundations of liberty and justice that could never be completely destroyed. The human virus had immunized the galaxy against tyranny. Dr. Nenia Foster's communication networks now connected billions of beings across thousands of worlds. Information flowed freely through channels that no government could control completely. The technology existed to share knowledge and coordinate action on a galactic scale. Ideas that took centuries to spread in human history now crossed the galaxy in days. The cultural impact was as significant as the political and economic changes. Art flourished as beings gained freedom to express themselves creatively. Literature explored themes of individual growth and social progress. Music combined elements from hundreds of different species to create entirely new forms of beauty. Education became a priority as democratic societies needed informed citizens capable of making intelligent decisions. The old system had kept most beings ignorant to maintain control, but freedom required knowledge. Schools and universities proliferated throughout the galaxy, teaching skills needed for self-governance. Rachel Kim managed the ongoing refugee crisis from her office on New Hope Colony. Millions of beings continued fleeing authoritarian remnants, seeking freedom in democratic territories. Each refugee carried stories and skills that enriched their new communities. The galaxy was mixing in ways that would have been impossible under the old order. The integration challenges were enormous, but also opportunities. Different species brought unique perspectives that enhanced problem-solving capabilities. Cultural exchange accelerated innovation as beings learned from traditions radically different from their own. The galaxy was becoming more diverse and more unified simultaneously. President Carter concluded her address to the Galactic Cooperation Council with a reflection on the journey ahead. We have proven that freedom is not a human invention, but a universal desire shared by all intelligent life. Our task now is to help that desire flourish throughout the galaxy and beyond. The New Horizon departed the next day, carrying hopes and dreams that had once seemed impossible. Captain Beth Sullivan guided her crew toward discoveries that would reshape understanding of life in the universe.